Hello, everyone. Welcome to Seattle Opera and Tagney Jones Hall. My name is Dennis Robinson Jr., the Director of Programs and Partnerships here, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to a fabulous day, the day of the world premiere of Jubilee, the opera that tells the story of the original Fisk Jubilee Singers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples. Since time immemorial, the Coast Salish peoples have been stewards of this land and its waterways and continue to shape the Puget Sound region today. This acknowledgement does not take place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, and it is our collective responsibility to honor, know, and preserve the land we are on. I also would like to recognize that much of what we enjoy today has been made possible through the labor of people who were enslaved, exploited, or marginalized. We acknowledge the contributions of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who have helped build and sustain our communities. We honor their labor, much of which went unrecognized, and commit to advocating for fairness, respect, and equity. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Toya Taylor, the Executive Director of Speak with Purpose. We have a special surprise for you all. We have some young scholars who have prepared some original speeches that they will share with us all today. Toya.
What a beautiful audience. Isn't it a beautiful day in Seattle? In October? I think that's because we are celebrating the legacy of Fisk Jubilee Singers. My name is Toya Taylor. I am the Executive Director and founder of a small but mighty nonprofit organization called Speak with Purpose. What is Speak with Purpose? We are the only public speaking program offered as part of the classroom curriculum in public schools throughout King County. Y'all can go, please. So what that means is scholars grades 4th through 8th learn to write all original speeches about their self-authored identity, the world, their place in it, and how they need us in the world to show up for them. So what you're going to hear today are original pieces that have been written by 2 of our scholars. One is in 6th grade, the other is in 8th grade, and they were given 2 weeks to write these pieces about and to process this history and legacy about the Fisk Jubilee Singers. So this is not easy to do. Some of the pieces are memorized, and some of the pieces are in progress, excuse me. So we have a thing here that we do at Speak with Purpose, because public speaking is right up there with jumping out of airplanes, a fear of spiders, a fear of death. So this is not easy to do. So what I need you to do, because this is a conversation, not a presentation. If you hear something that these young scholars say, you can snap it up. Let's practice. Okay. You can do this, which means I agree. This classroom language, y'all, but it works. You can say, me too. And in the spirit of Bertha Bell Brown, my grandmother, if it gets really good to you, you can say, yes, go on, baby, go on, baby. All of those things, because they need your energy and spirit in celebrating the legacy and the spirit of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. So the first one coming to the stage, and don't forget about us, y'all. These scholars have passed out information about our organization, and we don't do this work alone. It takes a whole community and a village to elevate, celebrate, and motivate our scholars. So we need you and your support. The first coming to the stage is Saleha. She is a 6th grader, and this is her original piece in celebration of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. Clap it up. Take your time, breathe. Take your time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Saleha Millard. I'm in 6th grade, and my first piece represents how I feel being Black in America today. Oh, say, can you see? By the dawn's early light, my people are fearing. My people are falling, but we rise. Above your red stripes and white stars, we break the barriers of your star-spangled banner, because this is not the past. No amount of water under the bridge can wash away the scars of your stripes and your stars on my people. Your eagles nor your egos scare us, because this is not just your America, this is our America. An America built off of the red, white, and blue, blood, bones, and tears of our people that some of us cannot even call ours, but take from us no longer. This land is stolen. Our spirits are broken, but we still remain. In a world where our differences are not appreciated, give us what we are owed. Give us the truth in your history books. Our stories, our people deserve to be heard. So, oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Or the land of the thieves and the home of the chains, because no matter how you hurt us, we will not be restrained. Because we are and always will be strong, powerful, and brave. My second piece is in dedication to the Fisk University Jubilee Singers. From halls once silent, they rose to sing, representing the Underground Railroad and the freedom it would bring. Struggles carried through the wind, they stood tall, even through the pain. They sang to the people to show that our lives were not in vain, to show the world we are here to remain. We stand tall together. We may fall together, but we always stand back up again. Negro spirituals steal away, swing low, sweet chariot. The songs of our ancestors forever play in our hearts, held in our minds, cherished pieces of art. So sing, sing, Jubilee. Sing us through the darkness, sing us through the rain, sing us through the storm and the worst of the pain. Sing us through the grief and the hardships of the past. Sing us to the future, free at last. Thank you.
Stay here, stay here, stay here. So one thing we always do to celebrate and acknowledge our scholars so they know that they've been heard is we ask the audience to share words, affirmations that you have received listening to them, pour into them right now. So you can say a word that expresses your emotions right now. Uplifting, powerful, inspiring, courageous, fierce, dynamic, impressive. Thank you. So thoughtful. Look at them, look at them. So thoughtful. One word for both of them. Madam President. Madam President. All right. Thank you, Saleha. Next coming to the stage is 8th grader Nuwani.
Hi, my name is Nuwani Jones. I go to Orchid K-8 and I'm in 8th grade. My piece is entitled, The Jubilee Singers were a biblical reference. Speaking of biblical references, John 7:24 says, "Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly," which society obviously hasn't done. Yet the Jubilee Singers continue to combat this, leaving fire in their trail, exposing those who believe it humane to hurt and harm others, whose melanated kissed skin carried the spirit of Africa. The Jubilee Singers shifted and shook racism at a time where blackface definitely wouldn't get you canceled and scrutinized. Where rubbing dark charcoal on your face and overlighting your lips with a deep rose red, scarlet red, was seen as funny. The Jubilee Singers not only demanded to be seen for who they were, they demanded to be heard, amplifying their voices so other black youth like me received opportunities we deserved. Though I may still get a couple looks in a store, though I may be told my hair is distracting, the Jubilee Singers belted out their voices to make sure no one can tell me this is a white-only establishment or you don't belong here. They connected the dots and filled in lines that not only saved Fisk, a historically black university, but created countless opportunities for the next generation. And yes, society still tries to silence us, but our voices stand tall, unshakable and unshamed. Wade in the water, swing low, sweet chariot, and so many Negro spirituals make me ponder and ask the question, shouldn't the red and purple scars on my ancestors' backs be enough? Do the scabs on their black scalps from a hot comb show how we have assimilated, failed, or fallen? Why must we mask our beauty, our pride? Does my skin made of black pearls threaten you? Do the coils in my hair make you shiver? I am proud of my heritage. The Jubilee Singers are lions and lioness, kings and queens. Their vibrato a mighty roar, shaking the foundations of racism and injustice. The Jubilee Singers went through the trenches, followed the path of the Underground Railroad, went from entering back doors in alleyways to singing on world-renowned stages, to make an unjust world feel the real meaning of Jubilee, the real meaning of liberty, which looks like me, black, beautiful, proud, triumphant, and honorable. Thank you.
Right, come in. I'm impressed and proud. Y'all, I don't have children, and thank God I don't, because every time these scholars get up, I feel like I have given birth right along with their parents. I'm nervous for them, but I am so extremely overwhelmed with joy and pride. Did y'all recognize that she memorized this piece? Can you feel and see how our scholars are processing information and then being able to openly express it in front of audiences? Whew, okay, I'm all right. Okay. Please give some words of encouragement and love to Nuwani. Fabulous, strong, powerful, beautiful, so outstanding. triumphant, brave, brilliant, preach, teach, courageous, fearless, moving, love, leadership, incredible, bold, confident, fearless, proud, so intelligent, writer, prolific writer, creative, amazing, speak. Maya Angelou is proud. Nikki Giovanni is proud. Harriet Tubman is proud. Sojourner Truth is proud. We are proud. And I'll say one last thing and then I'll get off my soapbox. I promise you. We do this work because I remember being their age and being from the South, being told that children are to be seen and not heard. So I didn't know that my voice was a gift and a talent that I could use to not only heal myself, but allow other young scholars the opportunity to do the same and stand up proud. Our future is in good hands. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And as long as we continue to do the work, they will continue to do the work, and we are all a better society for it. So Dennis, Seattle Opera, thank you for investing in our young people. This is what matters. Appreciate you all.
I had a whole introduction of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, but I don't think I have to do it now because you two did a great job, so thank you for saving me. We have a great panel for you all today before our world premiere tonight at 7:30. If you're coming to the production tonight, please come a little early. Celia will be doing her piece again with Lifted Youth Gospel Choir in the lobby, and Lifted will be performing from, I have to get the time right, 6:45 to 7:15. So if you're going to the show, go a little early and watch Lifted. Our panel today is fabulous. Moderating our conversation is Seattle Opera's artistic ambassador, a professional singer who you've seen on Seattle Opera's stage many times in the last 3 seasons, as Malcolm X in The Life and Times of Malcolm X in 2024, Fafner in Das Rheingold, The Father in Blue and the Commendatore and Don Giovanni in 2021. In his role as artistic ambassador, he helps us to re-envision opera as a community art form where all can come together to experience and reflect on our shared humanity. Also, Seattleite Marlette Buchanan, an accomplished performer of opera, musical theater, and other genres of music, who also currently serves as the executive director of Coyote Central, a member of the voice faculty at Pacific Lutheran University, an alumna of Fisk University, where she toured nationally and recorded as the lead soloist with the Fisk Jubilee Singers. We also are welcoming Dr. G. Preston Wilson, an alumnus of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, during which time the ensemble was awarded the National Medal of the Arts. And in October of last year, was appointed as the director of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And we have Dr. Agenia Walker Clark from Nashville. Dr. Clark was the CEO for the Girl Scouts of Middle Tennessee. She was previously the Vice President of Human Resources for the Tennessee Education Lottery Corporation, Senior Director of Human Resources at Vanderbilt University, Manager of Government Relations at Nortel Networks, and currently, in September 23, was named the 18th President of Fisk University. Please welcome to the stage our illustrious panel.
Oh, this is an honor. I was here last night talking to Tazwell, which was an experience, but we have real life experience of the Jubilee Singers here. So it's gonna be interesting to dive into. Heard a little bit of the chit chat in the back room, and yes, I wanna dig into some of that. But I wanna start with you, Dr. Clark. We've been hearing about the Fisk Jubilee Singers all week. A lot of advertising about the singers, but the university is more than just the singers. Can you tell us a bit about the university as the head of an institution?
Fisk University is what I will always say is a jewel in the crown of Nashville, Tennessee. Many don't know that when the institution was established in 1866, it was the first institution of higher learning in that small, desolate little city known as Nashville, population around 16,000. However, the city population had close to 4,000 freed slaves. And thank goodness for the missionaries who came out of the Northeast, who came to provide education. We have Fisk University. So it was the first institution of higher learning, and that gave us what I would say the foundation of establishing the importance of education in Middle Tennessee, which today has more than 25 institutions of higher learning. But the groundwork had to start somewhere, and it started at Fisk University.
So it's interesting. It's always, in doing my research, you realize that slavery ended in the Civil War. Slavery ended in 1865, and the university was started in 1866. Yeah. So I think it was October of 1865, and the university was started in, I think, like January of 1860. So it was like a matter of months. So that's really, really impressive.
It was a very immediate transition, keeping in mind that this war had claimed many lives.
Yeah.
And it was sort of evident the direction this region of our country was going in. So these missionaries who were in the Northeast packed up and immediately fled to this area because they realized all of these freed slaves were there and they didn't know how to read and write. So how were they going to continue to contribute to our society without having those very basic skills? So Fisk University started as the freed colored school, basically coming together with these white leaders to educate those freed slaves in reading and writing. However, after they came into that community, they realized that the skills and competencies of those individuals far exceeded just reading and writing. And that's when it became a university.
Yeah. So I think in that 1865 class, I read that the age range of student was from 7 to 70, which is really fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then when the institution was chartered, so to me, when I look at my experiences with Fisk, I see it in such a totally different lens because I didn't have the privilege to attend the institution. But oh, what a joy it is to be a part of it. But what I quickly realized is that the desire to read and write, which is something we all just take for granted, that the desire to make that accessible to these newly freed people, that when the institution was chartered by the state of Tennessee and to become a university, the chartering mission was to provide an education to any and all who did not have access to higher education. Still to this day, Fisk University is not a race-based admission institution. It has always been about access to those who were denied access. And at the time that it was established, those who were denied were not just the freed slaves, but there were some poor white folks who couldn't have access either. Fisk University was started to provide access. So not only are we the first institution of higher education in our community, I also say we redefine the meaning of access, because education was thought to be something every American should have the opportunity to pursue. And that's what happened at Fisk University.
Yeah, that leads me to my next, it was another question further down the list, but I think what you speak to for me is the importance of the acronym HBCUs, Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Can you speak to the importance of this network of colleges, not just Fisk, but this network of colleges of HBCUs, and why it was important for, and still remains important for our community?
So keep in mind, Fisk, 1865, 1866. And there were a handful of other HBCUs that started in this era. And of course, where are they? They're in the Southeast. There are a few in the Northeastern region, but the majority in the Southeast. Not many made it past, I don't think, Oklahoma. So I think it's so endearing that I'm here in Seattle for the premiere of the opera Jubilee. I can't tell you how exciting it is to know that the beauty of these stories continue to reach far. But the U.S. government decided in 1965 that these schools had been established and were providing an extremely important purpose to this country. And in 1965, the federal government established what is known as HBCU, Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And the reason they did that is because while the rest of the world was moving forward, these institutions, which at that time were primarily private, there were some state schools, but the private ones in particular were continuing to make it day by day. But the outcomes and the contributions of their work was hugely significant. So in 1965, by act of our federal government, we had the establishment of our historically black colleges and universities, and that created a window of opportunity for these schools to get federal funding. And still to this very day, being an HBCU provides that privilege, not at the levels when it was originally established, but still at a very important level. So it was the U.S. government that came up with the HBCU definition, and that definition is still representative of the nearly 100 HBCUs that still exist in our country today.
Amazing. So you are president of the Fisk University. We met earlier at breakfast today, and you said you had no intention on running a university. But you are familiar with the area. You've been in the area for a long time. So imagine you have a history and a knowing of what Fisk was. When they asked you to be president of Fisk, what did that do for you? What happened for you?
So I got the phone call from a search firm. And based on that conversation, I remember thinking, there's no way Fisk University will ever ask me to be its president. Therefore, I'm not going to hang up and call all of my friends and say, you're not going to believe what happened today. I didn't call anyone except my husband. And my friend Sally Bailey is here with us from Nashville, and she didn't hear about it either until it hit the newspaper. So anyway, I did not have the expectation that I would ever be considered. But I do have to share this. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, in a part of Mobile that was designated for black people to live in. And this was under the gubernatorial leadership of the George Wallace. And I'm not going to go into that history, but in the second grade at Stanton Road Elementary School, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Green, said to all of you kids, I'm preparing you for the future, and your future will take you to Fisk University. And well, I'm sitting there, I'm just going to be honest, that meant nothing to me. I'd never heard of Fisk. And also, in the home that I grew up in, my family never talked about universities or colleges. we went to the public school down the street, and she must have said that to us 100 times. And I'll never forget my friend in the second grade, Sanja. I said to her, I said, have you ever heard? She goes, I don't know what she's talking about. And I remember us laughing about it. Fast forward, I get married, and I moved to Middle Tennessee, where Fisk University is. I moved there after getting my master's degree, and I was trying to decide what will my community service be. Well, the corporation I worked for at that time, I bumped into the CEO of the corporation in the cafeteria and engaged in a conversation and said, so what keeps you up at night? His name was Roy Merrills, and he said, Fisk University. And my ears perked up, and I said, can we talk? Anyway, he shared with me that he was on the board of Fisk University, and at that time, the president was struggling with having enough instructors in the classroom. I thought about that, went and found the CEO the next day, and I said, I think I can help you sleep better at night and help Fisk solve a problem. You recruited me and a bunch of other, at least mastered level students to come to the institution. Can I meet with the president at Fisk? So for 3 years, my first civic duty in Nashville was as an adjunct instructor at Fisk University. So when I got that call in July of last year, I reflected on my second grade experience. I reflected on the unbelievable experiences I had for the 3 years that I taught in the classroom there. The only reason I stopped is because I went into labor, and I had to go home. Well, I had to have the baby and go home, so that's how my career there ended. But I thought of those two experiences, and I thought, wow, I actually got this phone call, and we'll see what my future holds. So I have now been at Fisk. My first official day at Fisk University was on Jubilee Day. Wow. It was on Jubilee Day last year. So I'm now celebrating 1 year and 5-6 days at Fisk University. But I feel like in my soul, I've been there forever.
That's amazing. I would definitely want to come back to that, but it's we're celebrating the music and the spirit of the Jubilee Singers and that original group, and we have two former members of the Jubilee Singers and the current director. Dr.
They
Wilson.
know how to sing. I don't. Let's make that clear. I'm sure you're all thinking, oh, does she sing too? No. Continue.
I hear you. So, Marlette and Dr. Wilson, as young people coming out of high school thinking about going to college and applying to Fisk, was it in your awareness of the Jubilee Singers, in your awareness, and was that a reason for you to apply there, to join the Fisk Jubilee Singers?
Yes. It's not the only reason or the primary reason I went to Fisk University, but I'm a Tennessean, born, partially raised Jackson, Tennessee, which is a little down. It's in between Nashville and Memphis. And so we knew that Fisk was the pride. It was like you had arrived if you went to Fisk University. This was last century also. We really had, you still arrive this century, but last century, definitely, it was like you had made it to the creme de la creme of colleges. And so it was in the back of my mind, and then when applying, I was like, oh, I've been accepted, yay, Fisk Jubilee Singers. Well, then things started to open, and I remember my grandmother saying to me, oh, you're going to Fisk. Wow. My grandmother did not go to college. And so to her, it was like, it was to some ways the epitome of just, you've arrived, and I'm so proud of you. And so at my graduation, that's exactly what she said. She said, you're singing these spirituals. I love this. That was her favorite part of the graduation ceremonies. Obviously, it was all of the singing that the Jubilee Singers did. And then just being able to put that pride and glory on top of that. So, yes.
That's great.
My experience is very different. I'm from Durham, North Carolina, and I was in the 6th grade. It was 2000, and the Fisk Jubilee Singers came to Duke University to do a concert for Dr. John Hope Franklin. And I remember the concert started, there was some milling about, and then they said, and now introducing the Fisk Jubilee Singers, and everyone applauded, and then I saw these 16 black young people walk on stage, and the whole room got sterile. And they started singing. I didn't know how they started. No one was conducting them. And then they started singing, and I never heard black people sound like that before. I had heard them in church, and I heard them singing jazz and R&B, but I never heard, this Negro spiritual. And I remember I turned to my mom, and I said, I'm gonna do that. And, she said, okay. And she bought me the book called Band of Angels, which is a picture book about the Fisk Jubilee Singers, and I did a book report on it. And in my household, everyone had to go to an HBCU. You can go anywhere you wanted to for your master's or advanced degree, but your undergrad had to go to HBCU. So to me, I was only going to Fisk University because that's the only way I could be a Fisk Jubilee Singer. And when it came time, I remember sophomore year of high school, I got to campus to do a tour, and I stepped in the chapel and I sat at the piano, and I said, yeah, this is it. And it just felt like home. And it was the only school I applied to. I got accepted to other schools, and so the choice was already made because Fisk had called me and I answered. And so I do reflect often, even now, how surreal it is to be in the 6th grade and say, I'm gonna be one of them, become one of them, and to now be the director. So it's something, yeah.
Do you remember at 6 years old, do you remember what that sound, the difference in the sound was? And can you explain that for us?
So there was this, of course, being so young, I couldn't articulate it at the time, but, there was this story that came out of these people. And, I sang in church and I played the piano, but there was just something about the stories they were singing, like the wailing that I heard came from another place. It didn't just come from, a piece of sheet music. It didn't come from a score. It was, in my mind, I said, well, it's not opera, but it's opera. And it just like the timbre of their voices was so clear, but so full. And, growing up in choirs at a young age, we have this very light, airy sound. They don't want you to sing with your whole voice, so that's what I was used to. But these people were like flat foot singing, but they weren't like dancing around or, they weren't moving around. It was just such a focused, intense, but enjoyable sound. And more importantly, I saw how with every song that still had no conductor, and I was just so enthralled by that, but with every song, the audience had no choice but to listen. No one was looking at their phones. Babies weren't crying. Everyone seemed to be paying attention to these 16 people telling a story. And I've just always been so inspired by that. And even now, we'll sing and, people will mill about, but as soon as the performance starts, people are so invested in what we're singing and how we're singing it.
That's amazing. Yeah, bravo, that's amazing. I think it reminds me of the original Fisk Jubilee Singers who we're telling the story of, and that's very much their story. Once they started embracing that spiritual and singing those songs, people had to recognize the power and spirit of what they were doing. Yeah. So, as singers, in this audition process, we were joking back in the room, the audition process to get into the Fisk Jubilee Singers, you both know very well. What is it? So you get accepted to the university and you have this goal of getting into the Fisk Jubilee Singers. What goes through your mind and what's the process of signing that sheet to audition to get in?
So when I was a student, it was just word of mouth. If you wanted to audition for the Jubilee Singers, you come to the Appleton room at this time, and you prepare a selection, and then Dr. Kwame and the team would ask you questions, and that'd be it. And then you'd have callbacks, and then you would just wait until the list went up, and that was painstakingly anxious, waiting for this list. And then he'd say, okay, I'll put it up by Tuesday morning. And then Tuesday night rolls around, and there's nothing on his door. And so that was my experience. But again, I just knew I was going to be a Jubilee singer. I didn't know what other people were dealing with, but I said, I know what I'm doing, So currently now, the Jubilee Singers, you have to be you have to be a student at Fisk. If you're a part-time student, full-time, graduate student, as long as you are eligible for Fisk credits, you can audition. And you come with 2 excerpts of music in contrasting styles, so a classical piece, a Negro spiritual, a jazz piece, and a gospel piece. You can sing Happy Birthday and Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and because I just want to hear you sing a song. And then there is a sight reading portion to do some oral skills, make sure you can match pitch. And I'm looking for your ability, so even if you can't sight read, because that scares everyone off. I even try to make it easier. I said, these aren't auditions, these are hearings. We're just listening. But when they saw that sight reading, some of them, they said, hey doc, this ain't for me. And then I asked them some questions about Fisk and the Fisk Jubilee Singers. This happens on the 2nd day of class. Callbacks are on the 4th day of class. And then until I feel the Spirit tells me who's gonna be the singers. But I kept the tradition that once the group is selected of traveling singers and apprentices, they get a handwritten note that shares what they are. And I still have all 4 of my letters from Dr. Kwame that said, congratulations. But I did keep that tradition. And outside of the musical aspect, selecting the Jubilee Singers is a spiritual process. It's not just, they sound good, because something I have found from Jubilee Singers that are current and alums, that they are amazing singers, they love the institution, but they're good people. And those are the people that we want to represent the institution, and the institution within the institution, that is the Fisk Jubilee Singers.
I can add a little to that. A very similar experience from when I auditioned. It was the first week of school. I was a voice major, so I already knew the auditions were coming, and had prepared my art song and my spiritual to audition with, and went in and ended up singing 4 songs actually for the panel. I don't know if they still have a panel, but there were a panel of 4 or 5 people, which was terrifying. And then the sight singing also we had to do. We also had an interview. It was like a job for us. That's how they approached it. This is a job. This is a commitment. The amount of work you're about to do, the dedication that you have to this group. Let's sit down and talk about it. They didn't tell me this. I thought I was just singing and sight singing and all of this. So that interview process was about 30 minutes for each of us, and we would all just stand outside in the hallway, because we were in the not the administration building, yes. Yes. Oh, we weren't in. Yes. So So we stood outside and we would just listen to everybody, and we're like, oh, they didn't make it. They made it. Oh, who's that? And we're all still new, but we did that. But the interview process we all still listened to, and that was the most fascinating to hear where they may not have excelled in the best singing. Some of the hearts that you mentioned were amazing, and some of those folks made it into the group as apprentices because their hearts were right, and their hearts were seasoned to be able to carry the message of the spirituals. Now, I will add, we had to audition every single year. It was not you made it, good, 4 years, you're going to be in it. No, some people didn't even make it a semester. But you did have to.
This is still true. This is still very true.
So, but we sustained 4 years. Yes.
I knew what it was going to be.
I knew too.
The Lord told me, and I listened.
I knew it was my pride and joy to be there and to be able to sing with this group and to tour with it. So it was my major, fortunately, but it was an extension of my heart. And for me, it was also an extension of my family. I said my grandmother on my mother's side, then there was my great-grandmother on my father's side, who lived to be over 100 years old, born in the late 1800s. Fisk Jubilee Singers were singing the music of her day to some degree. And so when we would sing, I would go back to Jackson, Tennessee, and sing for her. And she'd be like, oh, yes, let me tell you what that really means. And this is how you're supposed to sing it. And this is my great-grandmother telling me this. And I would go back and say, oh, you know what my mother Besma said? She said we're supposed, she's like, oh. So the heart is very much a part of it. The understanding of the history is a part of it. It's not just the notes on the page. And anytime anyone sings a spiritual, you have to go a little bit deeper than just the notes on the page, the words, complain about the dialect or whatever it is. You need to understand what it is that makes that so important to a people of yesteryear, but also that carries through civil rights movements, that carries through where we are today. You have to have that when you sing it. That was part of our interview.
That's amazing. So I'm going to ask, but I imagine what you would say that the heart of the founding of the Jubilee Singers still resonates today. When you were in that room and rehearsing in Jubilee Hall, which still exists, you see that floor-to-ceiling painting. That spirit reverberates in that building. When you're walking in there, like do you feel that weight? Do you feel that prestige? Do you feel that pressure even to uphold that standard of what it meant to be a Jubilee Singer? Is that something that you walk through the world with, knowing that you are an alumni of that organization?
I'm happy to answer this one for a minute. I'm picky, very, very picky. I am currently in a show someplace else that has a spiritual that's sung through it. And every night I'm not singing it, someone else is singing it. And every night I'm like, okay, we're coming to the part where you're supposed to really emote. I'm the actor on the stage, not the singer, and I'm still very picky about it. When I'm an adjunct faculty member at Pacific Lutheran University in the voice and theater department, and whenever the choirs sing spirituals, I'm always, okay, that is a fortissimo. Why? So that pickiness is still there. It's very much there. And then even some of the choices, I'm like, why did you choose that? Oh, Moses Hogan said that the arranger says it's supposed to be written that way. And I said, no. The people who actually sang it said it's supposed to be sung this way. It's supposed to have this meaning. So that pickiness is still very much there. Anytime I hear a spiritual, anytime.
Being back on Fisk campus, I've always enjoyed coming back to visit campus. I've always enjoyed coming back to homecoming. And I'm always so enraptured with the spirit of the institution. I love seeing my friends and my former professors who are now my colleagues. And when it comes to the Jubilee Singers, it's a heavy honor. Like, I am blessed with the opportunity to do this. The Jubilee Singers were sacrificing their lives for me to have the opportunity to be here. And so my prayer is that I don't mess it up. And I teach in a way so that my students will also have that same realization that, yes, we sing and we sing beautifully and people are moved by our performances, but this is a blessing. It's hard work. We move a lot, we travel a lot. We spend a lot of time together. We fight. But this is an honor. This is a blessing. And we only get one lifetime to do it. And so make sure that you make the most of every rehearsal, every sectional, every performance, because everyone is not blessed to do this. And getting them to understand that, I had the opportunity to take them to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. last semester. And there's a small exhibit about the Fisk Jubilee Singers there. And we got to that picture. It was a portrait of the original 9. And I had them, line up, and we performed, in front of that picture. And halfway through the song, 3/4 of the choir is crying. And I said, y'all gonna mess up this. We are trying to get this for, this is for social media. Y'all can cry later. But I was also very, very happy that they got it. They understood that the music, this mantle that we are holding is much bigger than us. And we have to keep fighting that. We have to keep fighting the fight. And we just do it through music. But all in all, it is just an immense honor, an immense blessing to continue the legacy that the original Jubilee Singers were carrying.
I imagine being, so was this at the African American Museum?
Yes.
Yeah. I imagine being in that museum, which if you haven't been to that museum in DC, it is an amazing experience. Yeah. But seeing something that you are part of on the wall represented, and then singing in front of that has to be powerful.
Even at their retreat, we have an annual retreat at the beginning of the semester. And during the retreat, yes, we do music and we do some team building, but then we also really dig into what does it mean to be a Jubilee Singer? What is my standard? But why are you a Jubilee Singer? And this is the first time they'd ever experienced anything like this. And I did it, it was by design. I had the original portrait of the Jubilee Singers, a picture of the portrait in the Appleton room. And I said, who are these 11 individuals? What were their thoughts when they took this picture? And then we talked about that for about 20 minutes. And then I moved to the next picture, which was the current portrait of the Jubilee Singers. And them seeing themselves, they said it almost looked like a cut scene in a movie, because they just flashed to the future. And they said those people were sitting there, and now I'm sitting there. And it was a moving experience to have that discussion, because I'll just be very honest. Today's young people are different. They're different. And we have to deal with them differently. And so the fact that I was able to find something that they could grab hold to, but it was meaningful to them, meant the world to me, that they got it. And as a teacher, there's no better feeling than having your students get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you took over the leadership after Dr. Kwame, who led the organization for 28 years, I believe, and you both worked under Dr. Kwame. So imagine he bridges that generational difference. What was it about him and in his passion in teaching and in love for Fisk and the Jubilee Singers that still, you still want to impart to the current Jubilee Singers? And you were still a musician, still singing, leading organizations. What was it about Dr. Kwame and his teaching and his ethics and his standards as Fisk Jubilee Singers that still you try to instill in your current students and take into your art?
One of the things that Dr. Kwame would say to us is, it kind of mirrors a little bit of what was already said about it's a blessing and an honor to be able to sing these spirituals. One of the things he would also say is, so there is you have to have a bit of humility when you're singing this. To portray the honesty of the intent of most of the spirituals, there's a humility that we today have to have, because we don't have the full understanding of what was happening at the time. So when you approach the music with humbleness, that will help you to carry and be open to what the music is actually supposed to say. So when I do work with students, in talking about spirituals, and actually not just spirituals, all music that they're interpreting, you approach it from a state of, I am open to what this music is really needing to communicate, what this music is really trying to say. The other thing that Dr. Kwame often talked with us about, you would think they would be musical things like make sure your rhythms are right on and all of that, but he would talk about integrity. Again, it ties to that humility also, but it's the integrity of how you're presenting this music and honor. How are you honoring the original Jubilee Singers? How are you honoring the people who championed this music and and then you, now being one of the singers, how do you keep that feeling going, the humbleness, the integrity, just the sincerity of the music? How do you keep that in mind? So those are things I try to pass on, in addition to let's get the rhythms right.
For me, at least, Dr. Kwame's humanity was the most humbling thing. I was very scared of him. He would walk into a room, and I mean, you sober up, and you didn't even have anything to drink. And his presence was just so sterile, but he was the most loving person. And what I take from him is that the same humanity that he possessed allowed him to give grace to everyone that he encountered. He always had a joke, you know, he was always laughing with you. But going back to our discussions around HBCUs, I graduated in 2010, and Dr. Kwame was writing letters of recommendation for me up until 2018. And even in my PhD program, during COVID, he allowed me to teach one of the performance seminar courses as a guest lecturer because I needed experience doing that during my program. And so that's what HBCUs are about. Is about the networking, but also the relationships and the mentoring that you're not paid for, but that you get to do. So much so that, when I knew that he was not doing well. The last concert I was with him was the commencement concert in 2022, and I got my last picture with him, and his health started to decline a few months after that. And, you know, I had my last conversation with him. He was still pretty responsive, but after that conversation, it was pretty fast. So he had passed, and his daughter asked me to perform at his funeral. I, of course, agreed. And you know, those are the hardest performances that you have to do. And I remember, you know, thinking as one of the board members of the Fisk Jubilee Singer Alumni Association, people were like, well, who's going to be the next director? And I said, I don't know, but I hope they get somebody good. And I was never interested in doing this job. And it was the summer of 2023, and I got a phone call, and it said, you know, are you aware that the position for the Jubilee Singers is open? I said, I'm cognizant. And have you considered applying? I said, not really. And they said, well, just send me some information. And, you know, it went on, and, you know, they offered me the position. And when the announcement came out, his daughter texted me, and she said, oh, Preston, I'm so excited for you. I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, you came to visit campus, and you came and talked to my dad, and you all were talking. I was in there, and when you left, he said, Rachel, that's going to be the next director of the Jubilee Singers, but don't tell anyone. And so, you know, I'm like, so you know, it was already intense because the announcement came on my birthday. I was on a field trip with fourth graders, so it was just a very intense day. And then, you know, I moved to Fisk, and, you know, and I'm just having all the feelings of being back on campus. And going through his office, I found his last manifesto, and where he stated, when Ms. Boomless, my voice teacher, asked me to come back to Fisk, I did not want to do it. but I wanted to give my best to Fisk. I wanted to give my best to the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And so I share that story to say what I want to instill in my students is to always give your best to the institution and give your best to the Jubilee Singers, because that's what Dr. Kwame did when he was alive as a Jubilee Singer, as a director, and then now even in his passing as the ancestor, he is still doing the same thing. And so I want my students to do their best, but that's why it's so important to have students attend HBCUs.
I want to add, yes. Certainly. I want to add something else about Dr. Kwame. One of the things he also did was continue to mentor and nurture. You said 7 years or so he was doing recommendations. I had moved, graduated, gone to grad school, come back to Washington, and all of that. And then the Jubilee Singers came up here. I get a phone call, Marlette, with the accent that he had. And I said, Dr. Kwame? Yeah. He was like, come sing with us. Well, I'm a little older than the Jubilee Singers are now. And he said, I don't care, we're singing in Tacoma. Can you come sing with us? And I was like, I'm practiced those songs. I don't know what you sound like. But that's just the way he was. He said, you used to sing these 2 solos. You gonna sing one of them. I didn't have a choice. And that's what he did. He would always just bring us in. I called him one time. This must have been early 2000s or so, and said, Dr. Kwame, I'm doing a presentation on Jubilee Singers. I want to make sure I have the correct information, blah, blah, blah. He said, let me send you something. And so I got this box of cassette tapes that I didn't even know existed, and it was a teaching guide for high schoolers or something on Jubilee Singers.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he'd signed it, and I said, I didn't even know this existed. But just that he was always a resource to all of his students, always. I mean, this is up until, like I said, this is in 2000s, and I was there just, not too long ago. But he always was just nurturing and a resource, and that is so appreciated, and I think in many ways sort of rare. And so he became really a gem to all of his students during that 28 years that he was there. We all hold him in high esteem.
And even to that point, at his funeral, when his family did a private burial, the alums of the Jubilee Singers went to Jubilee Hall in the lobby, and we were just calling out songs, and we would just start singing them. We had the pitch pipe, and then we would just start singing. And we knew all the breath marks, we knew all the inflections, and some of us had not performed together at all. And then I was seeing, my people from Sacred Journey, we hadn't performed since 2007. It is 2022. And, I don't know about y'all, but I forget everything. And for us to be able to come together and just, our Father, 1, 2, and it's the most glorious thing. But that shows the level of musicianship, but also the level of love that Dr. Kwame possessed for the students and how much we loved him, because we were not going to sing this music wrong. But the spirit of the music was there, and we know that his spirit was there with us, and even through tears as we were singing these songs. I will never forget, just at the drop of a hat, singing these songs that we had not performed in 15 years, because that's the kind of teacher that Dr. Kwame was.
Yeah. That speaks to legacy, it speaks to love, it speaks to passion, it speaks to excellence, it speaks to who he was as a man. You both told a story when we were in the back room about a tradition he had at concerts to turn to the audience and ask if there were any Fiskites in the room. Yeah. And there were people that would stand up on canes and get up and represent. What was that experience like for you?
Well, my mother is an HBCU graduate, and so she would discuss, the pride that people would have for their institution. And, I was in school, I was like, when my mom she loved everything. And I didn't understand it until I got to Fisk, and then I graduated. And I said, I love this place. And there are other people who love it like I do. And seeing people come together across generations, have a love for this institution, and do whatever they can for the institution, you know, it was amazing. I just never seen people. And there's a lady she found out I was going to Fisk, who lived in North Carolina, in Durham, where I was. And every time I came home, we call these holy handshakes, where she would come and shake my hand and leave a little bit of money in it. And every time I came home, I would go over and speak with her, and before I left, she would give me a holy handshake. And she did it every year up until her passing. When I went home, she graduated many, many years ago. I will not tell you when. But even still, we had some of the same experiences, walking through Cravath, walking on the yard, encountering our teachers in Spence. And, you know, now I'm able to be the same person, like, oh, you're a Fisk guy, come here. You know, I'm able to do the same thing. And that's the kind of pride that I had saw, but now I get to participate in.
So Dr. Clark, I have a question for you. You're the president of an entire university, but the Jubilee Singers hold such a place in the history of the university. And all the things that you have to deal with as a president, how much of an awareness is the importance of the Jubilee Singers in what you do?
So I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed listening to them, because before getting there, I knew that there was a lot of history in this institution, so much so that I knew that I probably only knew very, very little of it. So that's why I brought my reference with me. This has been my Bible since I've been at Fisk. I've read it 4 times now, and it only takes me to 1946. But this book has just been so wonderful. Yes, the Fisk Jubilee Singers, but the archives in our art collection is not to be forgotten. We have more than 4,000 pieces thanks to the Harlem Renaissance and an era when our Black artists had nowhere else to go. So they came to this elite institution in the South, and that is where they shared their gifts. And still today, we have murals painted around Cravath Hall, as well as other locations on campus, painted by the famous artist Aaron Douglas. There's so many of these unique pieces in our collection that at the end of July of this past summer, the Metropolitan Museum of Art wrapped up was one of the most successful exhibits in the history of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, called Harlem Renaissance and Transatlantic Modernism. There were more pieces featured from the collection of Fisk University than any other individual or institution because of the depth and breadth of our collection. So we have more of the arts. But the beauty of what has happened at our library is that it has transformed from being what you think of as a traditional library, and it too serves as one of the most amazing archives and collection of social justice, because we had some very important leaders out of that era at Fisk University. John Lewis, who went on to become the congressman, and Diane Nash. These were very strong leaders in the civil rights era, and therefore our social justice work is still collected there. The works of W.E.B. Du Bois are at Fisk University.
He was an alum, correct?
He was an alum. Nikki Giovanni. We just have such a rich history and such a collection. Don't get me wrong. There is nothing, if you have not heard the Fisk Jubilee Singers, hear them and see them perform, you have not experienced anything like it before. period. So I'm just going to go ahead and alert you, and you're welcome. October the 6th, you're welcome to come to campus to hear them premiere this new student group every year. It's always on October the 6th. But while you're there, you must wander into Jubilee Hall. The Fisk Jubilee Singers toured Europe in the late 1870s to raise money to make sure their beloved institution would thrive. They raised enough money that they were able to build the very first permanent structure on that campus. And that building became known in honor of them as Jubilee Hall. That building exists today. We still use it today. It is a dormitory, but it also houses that ceiling to floor, corner to corner wall of the portrait of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, commissioned by Queen Victoria during their European tour. That portrait exists, and it still hangs in that hall. If you have not been on this campus and heard those singers and seen that portrait, you must do it, because it is a part of the foundation of our country. It speaks to what the Black people of this country have gone through to make sure that these stories are sustained, and all of us have the privilege of enjoying them today. Queen Victoria was so taken by these voices when she heard them in the late 1870s, and she was so taken by the different shades and pigmentation of their skin, she commissioned her portrait artist to paint them. It is one of the very first paintings of Black people that reflects the color of our skin, because that's how they did it in Europe, but we didn't do it that way here in America. That's why you must come and see it. It doesn't move, but Fisk is there, Jubilee Hall is there. But the other thing Queen Victoria said was, from wherever these voices come, it must come from a city of music. Nashville is known as a music city, not because of country music, but because of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. You must come to Nashville. You're gonna love the opera tonight, and I'm thrilled that this opera is still continuing to bring to life the international impact of the Fisk Jubilee Singers. In the late 1870s, when they were performing in Europe, crowds the sizes of 10 to 15,000 went to hear those voices. I'm not talking about downtown Nashville, Bridgestone Arena. I'm talking horse and buggies in the 1870s. And when you all were talking, I pulled out one of my notes, because one of my favorite things about the Fisk Jubilee Singers singing in Europe was this is in advance of one of their tours. And hearing of the tour to London, Mark Twain wrote, "Friends in England," about the upcoming performances. He wrote, "I have heard them sing once. I would walk 7 miles to hear them sing again. And you will recognize that this is very strong language for me to use when you remember that I was never fond of pedestrianism." That to me sums up impact and the importance of these magnificent voices. And while I did not hear them in the 1870s, I have heard them as recent as last Sunday. And the magic is watching them communicate with each other. You have to see that. They don't sing to you. They sing from here, and they communicate with each other the whole time they're singing. But when they get through tickling your soul, you will understand why, from the late 1800s to today, we have the Fisk Jubilee Singers. We have one of the most renowned art collections in the world, and we also have our amazing library of study, and we still have those magnificent voices that remind us where we came from and why it's important. After 158 years, my task as a new president is to make sure we're there for another 158 more.
There's nothing else I can ask after that. Yeah, I'll pass it to the audience.
I think we've got time for maybe just one or two very quick questions, and I've got the microphone
And
here.
before I answer, or they answer any questions, I really would like to say that it's also a pleasure to have with us today a professor in our music department. Professor Gwendolyn Brown has traveled here because she too is an opera singer, but she gives of her time to continue to work with voice and training at Fisk University, and it's a pleasure to see you. I'm glad you could make it.
All right, I saw a hand over here.
Good afternoon. I too am a Fisk graduate, and I have to tell you that you three, are such marvelous ambassadors for Fisk and for the Fisk Jubilee Singers. You speak with such eloquence, but such spirit and such heart and such, you can see Fisk in you. And I'm just so very, very proud that we here in Seattle, I don't live here anymore, but I'm here now, but that we are premiering this amazing story, which needs to be told and felt, because so many of us, go through life and, but the story of the Fisk Jubilee Singers and their continuation is such an important story for us to learn and for us to know, all of us to know, this welcoming community of so many ethnic groups, to know that in 1876, we went and we conquered and we succeeded, and that same success and spirit and love and representation I see in each of you, and I'm just so very, very proud that I was a little bitty part of it. But I praise you. I praise you, and I praise the ambassadoring that you're doing unintentionally, just by being who you are, who each of you are. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question if anybody's got a burning one. Ah, great, right here.
Right, I'm a Fiskite as well. Preston, we graduated in 2010 together.
Wait, is that Dot?
There's Dot.
St. Louis?
Yeah.
Hot! Shut!
So, congratulations, Dr. Wilson. I echo those same sentiments as well. Preston, my question is to you. Sorry, Dr. Wilson. Well, Fisk, from my experience of being a Fiskite as well, has always had really high standards. I came through the political science program, which I thought was probably the hardest program at Fisk, and everybody was scared of Dr. Kwame, even if you were a Jubilee singer or not, right? So, because everyone knew of the high standards. And you spoke earlier of how the younger students now are different. How do you plan to transfer that level of excellence to those younger students, being that they're so different?
Fire and brimstone. So I made it very clear. Even we had a ceremony for Dr. Kwame in March as a Fisk community to be able to celebrate his life. And I've been very clear, I am not Dr. Kwame. I will never be Dr. Kwame. I don't want to be Dr. Kwame. I'm going to be Dr. Wilson. And being very confident in what I do and who I am. So there's the foundation of my pedagogy. Now, if you ask the singers, I run a really tight ship. I don't leave room for excuses, but I also provide resources. So there's no excuse for you not to know something because you have the resources. And even if you don't have the resources, you have the ability to gather the resources. And so the excellence that I am trying to teach my students is so that they can be independent musicians. We have a high turnover rate as it relates to performances. I mean, Jubilee Day is supposed to be our first performance for to the community. But before Jubilee Day, we had 4 performances. And so we had to get ready and get ready quickly. I need students who can manage themselves, who can teach themselves. And that is what Dr. Kwame taught us. He would not conduct us in the performance. He would stand behind and take notes. And so that is what I'm getting more comfortable with doing, because I believe that the original Jubilee Singers were teaching themselves. They were taking care of themselves. If there was an issue, they would solve it amongst themselves. So I look at myself more as a facilitator than as a teacher. I'm here to provide resources and some guidance. And that's what Dr. Kwame did. So he would just come into a room, it would get very quiet, and he would tell us a song, and we would sing it. And so encouraging my students to be independent musicians, but also, more importantly, to be the best human. Be a good person. No one cares what you sound like if you're nasty. No one cares what you sound like if you don't smile. And if there's a reason why you're not smiling, then let's talk about that. And that's what we talk about with students being different. So my approach is a little different because when I became a Jubilee Singer as a freshman, the old heads came in, Dr. Kwame left the room and shut the door. They said many things to us. I wouldn't do that with these students because that's just the kind of care that I have for them and understanding, I taught public school for a number of years. So that also informs the way that I approach my students. I know that they need a little bit more support than we did. COVID happened, and we really have to have a very serious conversation about how COVID impacted education. So all of those things go into this being a good human who happens to be an amazing independent musician.
Can we have another round of applause for this amazing group? How fabulous for these young people to see people who go to HBCUs in a region where we have many folks who are HBCU alums, but we have no historical Black college here. So thank you for sharing your stories with them specifically, but with all of you. We hope to see you at Jubilee. It opens in about 2 hours, and we'll run through October 26th. Thank you all. Enjoy and get home safely.